How sharp do your images really need to be? In today's video, I'm going to discuss this both for yourselves and also for my work. Now, if you don't know, I work as a commercial food photographer, and we've just had a brief come in with reasonable budget. And part of that brief is to have extremely sharp images, and that's from the creative director's point of view. I'm going to discuss exactly what we're packing for that shoot at the end of it and how that factors in. But before that, we need to take a bit of a deeper dive into this topic. Camera brands will have you believe resolution, autofocus points, high ISO, and sharpness are key. However, having worked in this industry for a considerable amount of time, so much so that I had hair at the start of it, I can tell you that that is not the case. Fundamentally, those things really don't matter in the commercial sphere. Now, one of the big reasons for this is that what you're doing at home, I'm guessing this because I did this, and this is no slight on you, we all do it. You take a shot, you pull it into Capture One, Lightroom, whatever you're using, you zoom into 100% and go, is that sharp? Looks sharp, could it be sharper? The problem with that is this. Nobody else has a screen. This is a postcard. I send these postcards out to people with my work on it. It's something I leave behind for marketing sometimes. This is a 100 megapixel file, but it's smaller than my face. And the limiting factor to sharpness here is the print media. I can't print it any sharper. This is not as sharp as the file is, but this is as sharp as I can make it. Almost all my work, client or personal, ends up on Instagram at some point. There is nothing I can do to make it bigger. This is an iPhone Plus. I can't remember which one it is, but it's a plus something. And this is as big as the file will get, and I can't zoom in to check the sharpness. All I can see is kind of what it is, like at web res. This beauty of a book is the BJP, the British Journal of Photography. It is lovely. They use different papers and different inks on different pages to get the best out of their images. Look at these beautiful images. Lovely. Highly recommend it. This is the only subscription I have at the moment to a magazine. Now, again, this image here, I can't do it justice on a camera, but this is sharp. But I bet it's sharper in real life because I can't really see any more than my eyes and this paper are letting me see. And that's important. You should be able to look at your image just on the screen without zooming in at all and say, this is sharp enough. If you're zooming in and going, it doesn't look sharp at 100%, that's probably not a very good idea. The only time that matters is if you're printing at 100%. And I have only done that maybe 4 or 5 times in my lifetime. And that is for fine artwork. Oh, and once I did it for an advert, but it was for an exhibition and they wanted a life-size print, like 1-to-1 print. But it's very rare we do that. When we do the massive billboards, they're really low DPI, dots per inch. When we do the massive digital billboards, they're pretty low resolution. A 6 sheet, which is the side of a bus stop, they're pretty high resolution relatively. So that's probably the sharpest you'll ever see your image, or at least that's the image size and quality that will allow you to see the most of your sharpness. But really, the prints aren't that sharp. So unless you're getting some particularly fancy printing done, most of your sharpness is lost when it hits the paper because of the ink, the plates you're using, if it's digital printing, the paper stock you're putting it on. So let's look at that in a bit more detail. What really matters in sharpness is often the perception of detail rather than the sharpness that matters. So this might be things like using specular light, using really contrasty light. If you want to learn about this sort of stuff, I've got a Lighting 101 workshop on my website, which is called A New Way to Light, which explains it all. But that is a better way to get perceived sharpness, not real sharpness, but we can't use the real sharpness anyway, as discussed, but the perceived sharpness onto the paper. Now let's look at this job I've got coming up. Now, really budget is not an issue here. So we are using a Phase 1 camera and blue ring lenses. Now, they cost about £700 a day to use. So it's reasonably high-end kit, but we're not using it because those lenses are wickedly sharp or because the backs are super detailed. We're using it because they have a high color bit depth. Nothing to do with what camera brands are trying to sell you. You probably don't know the bit depth of your camera, but this one has the highest. We're also using it because it has built-in focus stacking. Now, this is where sharpness can be perceived on the page. If more of it is in focus, it appears sharper. Now, I know somebody's going to be pedantic and talk about semantics of sharpness, detail, micro contrast, and all the rest of it, but when the photos are for the public, that doesn't matter. What matters is, do they perceive these images as sharp? Because that's what my client wants. And to do that, I'm going to need specular light, high contrast light, and a great depth of field. Now, shooting at f22 or f32 or 48, that kind of reduces the sharpness distinctively. But if I shoot at f16 and focus stack it with a bazillion shots, it is going to have the perception of being perfectly sharp front to back. It's going to have great detail because of the lighting we're going to use. It'll be directional, it'll be specular, it'll be hard. And that will give the perception, regardless of the media type we go for at the end, of a sharp image. Now, of course, I'm going to zoom into 100% and see how sharp it really is, but it is sharp enough. I can take an image that will be just as sharp with my Canon system, with a Canon lens and manually doing the focus stacking. The reason I'm not is because we don't have time to manually focus stack. I could use my big bellows camera, which is back here, with a 1970s Secor lens on it. That'll also be sharp enough for this application. The only reason I'm not using it is because of time. So the reason I'm using this big fancy camera, this big bit of kit, is because we do not have time to use other ones. And this is not to do with sharpness. The sharpness would be the same at the point of printing on all three camera systems I have at my disposal. It doesn't matter how sharp it is on your screen at 100% when zoomed in, it matters how sharp it is on the paper. Camera brands don't want you to know that, but hopefully this can put your mind at ease.